there. Let me do a quick demo of Transformer Lab. Transformer Lab has two components. There's a server API that's running, and then an application that you see in front of you here, which is an Electron app, which talks to that server API. And so the server is going to do all the complex machine learning work. The GUI here that you see is talking to that API. So the first thing we do is we can actually look at how our machine is performing right now. We can see that we're not using a lot of resources. If we click on computer, you can actually see the details of that machine. You can see I have a local machine with an NVIDIA graphics card. That's an RTX 3090 with version 12 of CUDA. And there's 12 gigabytes of VRAM, which is the most important thing, and I'm not using any of it. The first thing then we do is we can actually start an experiment. An experiment encapsulates the work that you're going to do with the large language model. And once we've defined an experiment, here we call it alpha, we can now associate a foundation model to it. These are foundation models that I've already downloaded, but we can go to the model zoo and see a bunch more that we can download just by clicking on them. Let's use one of the ones we've already brought in locally. This one's called Mistral Instruct. And once you do that, you can see I can't yet chat with it because it's not yet running. There's different inference servers you could use by clicking on the gear, but we'll use the default one. And when I click run now, it's going to start loading the model into memory. You can see now that a bunch of my VRAM is now occupied, but the GPU isn't actually running heavily because we're not actually interacting with the model. But it's ready to be interacted with, so I can say, hello, how are you? But you can see that the prompt actually was set to be quite mean. So let's set that prompt to be more helpful. And try that again. And now it's much more friendly. You can also do things like completions and say, and then we can generate a completion. But the most important thing about Transformer Lab is that it's not just for interacting with models. We can actually do things like train and evaluate them. To train a model, I need to bring in training data. We have a data set store of a bunch of different training data that you could pull in from the internet. But we can also create a new data store by just naming it and then dragging and dropping files. I have a bunch of files just in the form of JSON, and I drag and drop them. The system will recognize those files and bring them up. If I click on preview, I can actually see the structure of the data that's in some of these data sets so that when I'm training them, I can see what are the different columns that are available. Now that I have some data, let's actually train a model. Let's stop this one and train a different foundation model. Let's try training an untrained llama, or let's try Vicuna actually. So we'll pull in Vicuna. We can see that underlying it is using the Llama architecture. And I have a plugin for training Llama models. Here's a bunch of different plugins I have, but I've already installed a Llama 2 model trainer. So now when I go to train, I can actually create a new training template to make LLM Eagle. And I can select one of the trainers that I have that's available for the specific model. I have the Llama 2 model trainer. I can pick the data set. Remember, I created EagleBot 2, so let me select that one. And I can set a bunch of the config that's available for the specific trainer, like setting the LoRa R and the LoRa Alpha. We won't do that now because I've already created a template. And so if I actually create it and click on Q, it'll start off a job and the training will begin. Training can take quite a long time, so I've already completed a training run here that took about 10 minutes. And I can actually see the output of what that training looked like over here. And I can click on TensorBoard to actually run TensorBoard behind the scenes and look at all the data behind the training. Here you can see what the loss function looked like and the different trains per epoch. The last thing I'll do here is evaluate. I can create a new evaluation for this model. Here I'm using the Eleuther Evaluation Harness plugin. I can select one of the different forms of evaluation, and that'll create a new type of evaluation. If I run this, I can then see the results and see the result of my evaluation. So I've done a bunch of complex things with this model without having to write any code. I can also store experiment notes, and all of this is wrapped with a REST API that's documented. So I can now embed this model in an application and do all the things we did, including interact with the model with an OpenAI-like API structure, but also train and evaluate through the API. Thank you so much.